Public Nemesis Media.
So recently there were many videos uploaded talking about the so-called downfall of the West, which was caused by floods of immigrants in the past decade or so. I won't name the channels that made those videos, but what I can say is that I don't like their takes on the subject. They miss the bigger picture of those massive immigrations, and some of them even cheer that the West is going through a collapse. Basically, the inability for a lot of migrants to fit with the natives, the worsening economic situation of average workers, the rise in crime, all those things that are destroying the West are seen by them as well-deserved. Now, my quote-unquote defense of the West you'll hear in this video doesn't come from some kind of love I have for it, or because I think it has a progressive system that can't do wrong. I know very well the exploitation and colonialism that the Western powers imposed onto a good chunk of the world, which is going on to this day. Indeed, I also condemn what the Western governments are doing to many nations on the planet. It's important to know I said governments and system. I have no problem with Westerners and their countries on their own. I had the privilege to visit some of them. There are aspects and laws I think are great. I like their cultures and respect the people. And I will admit that I am, at least partially, an Amerophile. So no, I don't want the West to collapse, but I would love to see their organizations like NATO and the European Union die, because they're evil bastards.
Why you booing me? I'm right.
First things first, you probably noticed that I put the word downfall in the title under quotes, which means that I don't actually think the West is going through a downfall. If you think that, you're 100% right. There is no downfall of the West going on right now. It is changing, sure, but its foreign policy is working exactly as planned. You see, when those YouTubers, who I still won't mention by name, talk about this supposed downfall, they describe it as karma. Essentially, the Western powers go to conquer a non-Western country, they destroy it, install a puppet government, and start taking their resources. Hence, the people who live in that country can no longer have a good life, and they move in large numbers to those Western countries, who now have to carry the burden of having too many foreigners on their backs. However, if we take a look at the bigger picture, we can see that those immigrant waves actually work in favor of Western governments. The ultimate exploitation is not just conquering a country and taking their resources, it's also taking their working force. The Western bourgeoisie is exploiting its workers as much as they can, while not paying anywhere near as much as those workers contribute. The result is a society where groceries cost a lot for the average worker, buying a new home is a nightmare, you spend a lot of time and energy working, sometimes more than one job, and with all that you can barely take care of yourself, let alone a wife and a kid. The low birth rates are a consequence of bad conditions for a family. The elites could drastically improve the birth rates in the West, but that wouldn't be profitable. Better to keep a woman work forever than give her money while she's pregnant or raising a baby. So they bring millions of cheap workers from other parts of the world to fill in the spot that the unborn Westerners couldn't. Some guy from Eastern Europe or from the Middle East will be happy to come and do filthy jobs that civilized Westerners wouldn't. It's even a meme at this point. The "you're against immigration, but who will make tacos and clean our toilets" narrative.
And if you kick every Latino out of this country, then who is going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump?
Oh, that's...
We can laugh at it, but it has some truth in it. You then have a society that's divided, and the bad working conditions are becoming even worse. The bourgeoisie couldn't care less about any of that. They don't care about their own workers, let alone the migrants they bring in. All they care about is profit for themselves and control. That is why the media, the corporations, and the politicians lie to their citizens that they need diversity, that it will make their society better, that it's an obligation, not a choice. If you dare to voice yourself against the massive immigrations, you'll be labeled as far-right or racist. If you get lucky, you'll end up in prison. The tyrannical system that is the European Union not only exploits many non-European countries and punishes them if they stand up to EU's rule, it also terrorizes its own European people who had no say in EU's foreign and domestic policy and who are demonized if they state that they are against those policies. Two different groups of people oppressed by the same overlords. This is why I cringe at simpletons who celebrate the supposed downfall of the West and laugh in the faces of Westerners. You have a fellow human being, a hard worker just like you, someone being stepped on by the same psychopaths that step on you, and all you do is say, Frankly, this is not much better than the far right who directs its anger towards immigrants rather than the ones that made them migrate. Just to clarify, I'm not talking about ordinary conservatives that some media label as far right, but the actual far right, which rapidly grew in size in the past decade thanks to Western politicians. All this trouble can be traced back to the same culprits: the politicians, corporations, and media. Even if the West was going through a downfall, it wouldn't solve anything because it would only affect the ordinary people, not the ones that caused the mess. A lot of us have forgotten to differentiate between government and citizens, and that leads to many awful takes. Let's look at United States of America just as an example. A lot was said about that country and many of its interventions across the globe. I'm not gonna tell you how the American foreign policy is misunderstood or how its attacks on many countries across the globe is somehow a good thing. Matter of fact, I'm very much critical of its aggressions like the next guy. But when I see some smartass trying to justify 9/11, a horrible event that killed around 3,000 innocent people because of the actions of the politicians who were completely unharmed, I start to wonder if we have any morals left. You'd think those same politicians don't treat their own soldiers as cattle. You'd think they care their veterans have a high suicide, PTSD, and homelessness rate. No, they just take another bunch of 18-year-olds who they'll send to die somewhere far away. Why would I be happy about a death of someone who was barely an adult, while the one that sent him to his grave is sitting comfortably in the White House? The downfall of the West is not a solution to anything. It's not its culture or nations that are the problem, it's their masters that are the problem. The elites, the bourgeoisie, whatever you want to call them, are not feeling any consequences from their actions. If anything, I explained that they've gained from their actions. The only downfall that we need is the downfall of those overlords and their organizations. Only with the defeat of the common enemy can both sides start living peacefully in their own countries. PNM signing out.